Hello. Hi. Are you a responsible person? And you always try to not make impulsive purchases? Me neither. So like me, you have purchased the ROG Ally during the worst economic depression since 1929. You're probably 3 months behind on your rent, but you know everything is gonna be okay because the ROG Ally was made to be played outdoors. Now I did also want to buy a Steam Deck, but my wife has this stupid rule. The kids have to eat first. I know it doesn't make any sense. So the Starfield release date, it's upon us. And all you've been doing is watching YouTube hype videos. And you have to play it on the ROG Ally when it comes out. So stick around to find out what steps you can take to have the best experience in Starfield Day 1. First you find the box that came with the device. You get the power adapter and everything that came with it. And put them with the ROG Ally inside the box. And when you're done, you take a photo. Next step, you go to Craigslist.com or Facebook Marketplace and create a listing for your ROG Ally. Now, so we can go to the next step. Let's pretend you sold it somehow. Maybe disguising it as a Steam Deck. Now it's time to get a real gaming PC, so you can properly enjoy Starfield when it comes out. Now how do you go about buying a new gaming PC? Well, that depends what kind of person/gamer you are. I created 3 categories revolving around one simple question. And depending how you answer, you realize what category mostly describes you. The question is, how many hours have you spent in Skyrim or other Bethesda games? If your answer is, I still play Skyrim in 2023, then you are likely an NPC.
Stop it. Get some help.
This could mean no personal connections or no pussy currently. Gamers in this category play a lot, but they only play 1 to 3 games every decade. So they don't know much about games in general, and much less about the hardware that plays their games. So they are likely to opt for a pre-built computer. If they pass the 150 hours mark in Skyrim, they would even go as far as to search for a pre-built computer in Best Buy. Next category. If your answer is, what is a Skyrim? Then you are likely a douchebag. You probably only play Call of Duty on Xbox. So probably the only computer you would buy would be a MacBook Air. Pretend you're checking emails in Starbucks. And the last one, if your answer is, I played some Skyrim, some Fallout 4, about 20 to 60 hours, then you are a regular gamer. Now this category will take the best option, and that is building your own computer. We will do just that using PCPartPicker.com and try to satisfy the requirements for Starfield while keeping the budget low. So the ROG Ally is $700 without taxes. Let's see if we can manage to make a PC with this budget with a build between minimum and recommended. We'll go on PC Part Picker. We'll choose a Ryzen 5 5600X, pick a motherboard that is cheaper, although this is not the best idea always. But since we're trying to keep the budget very low, we're gonna pick this one. For memory, we'll go with dual 8 gigs 3200 for $40. Storage, we'll pick an SSD, 1 terabyte, $50. Sounds like a good deal. The problem with what we're doing right now is this build is not future-proof. It has DDR4, the SSD is PCIe 3.0. It's a build that will be cheap, but eventually expire and have to be sold or thrown away without the ability to upgrade. For the graphics, our only option here is a 3050 because the budget is very low. We'll go with a cheap one. Also, the case will go with a cheap one. For the power supply, I think we can go with a 600 watts, but just to be sure, we'll pick the 650 watts. This is bronze certified, semi-modular. It's not a very good power supply, but it sure is cheap, and that's what we're looking for. We're not going to choose an operating system because you can buy a key. So I think that's it for the build. We are at a total of $717.80, $18 more than the ROG Ally. But is it better than the the ROG Ally? We'll find out later in the video when we will compare the minimum and recommended requirements for Starfield with some benchmarks of the ROG Ally. But the build we just created stands between minimum and recommended. It's not quite as powerful as a 2080 with a 3600X, but it's better than the minimum. So if you've decided to keep the ROG Ally, let's take a look at some benchmarks and the information available on the hardware requirements for Starfield and try to get an idea of how it's gonna work, because obviously we don't know for sure. To benchmark the exact requirements, we'll use GPUcheck.com, where you can pair any graphics cards with any processor and benchmark a large variety of games in 1080p, 1440p, ultra-wide, 4K, and also different graphical presets. We scroll down until we can see all the benchmarks for 1080p. We look for the game, we click on it, and the website will provide us with a detailed graph or graphs for all the settings combinations possible for that particular game. What I will do next is put side by side all the results for the minimum requirements, for the recommended, for our custom budget PC build, and the ROG Ally, of course. The first game we are using to benchmark is Metro Exodus. On the ROG Ally on low settings, I got an average frame rate of 78. Considering the max frame rate at 349, I think I must have made a mistake or the benchmark tool made the wrong calculation. Probably the game generated a very high frame rate for a very brief moment and the average frame rate was calculated higher. And even as it is, gives 62% lower performance than our budget build with the same price as the ROG Ally and the minimum requirements for Starfield. We're not even considering the recommended requirements for Starfield. These are more for like a control group. On medium settings we get even lower at a 72% lower performance. As you can see, our budget build and the minimum requirements are very similar. On our budget build we get more frames at high quality 4K than we get on the ROG Ally on medium 1080p. In Cyberpunk, things are getting worse, much worse. The ROG Ally can manage to get 38 frames on average on low settings, while our budget build, which is very similar, like I said, to the minimum requirements for Starfield, gets 182 on low 1080p. The last and most important game, of course, is Fallout 76. It has the same engine as Starfield, called Creation Engine. They actually call it Creation Engine 2, but we all know it's the same engine, slightly updated and modified. This engine is notorious for being poorly optimized, and in my benchmark of the ROG Ally, just by moving the camera around, your frame rate could change from 30 to 57. Very hard to benchmark, it's not consistent, and I couldn't properly benchmark the game on the ROG Ally because of the many issues with the game and the device itself. While I was recording, OBS would crash from time to time. Every time I would switch to a different settings, I had to restart the game, and I also made a grim discovery about the ROG Ally. Well, the game gets from 35 up to 57 frames on the 30 watts power mode, and in the 15 watts power mode would also be playable with frame rate ranging from 30 to 48. But the big issue is there's a massive difference between having the device plugged in and having it not plugged in. The last BIOS update was supposed to fix that, but the game runs terrible in 15 watts power mode without being plugged in. So there are still performance issues that need to be fixed. Will the game still be playable though? That means 30 FPS at least. Well, judging how Fallout 76 actually works on the ROG Ally, I think Starfield will be playable, but will suffer from the same issues, like dropping from 50 frames to 30 frames just by looking in a different direction. And you have to plan your settings accordingly. If you're changing your settings in an area where you usually get 40 frames per second and as a consequence drops to 30 frames, it will probably go down to 25 frames in a different area. So it's really hard to decide what settings you should use because the frame rate is not consistent in any area. And the difference in the benchmark results from our budget build, the minimum requirements, and the recommended requirements is again massive. As for our budget build, obviously it's more powerful. If you don't care about being able to have a portable device and you just want a game, the obvious choice is building your own computer. With a $700 build, you'll be able to play 1080p over 60 frames any game. You'll have a great experience. With the ROG Ally small screen, you have the option to go to 720p to further improve frame rates, but ultimately you should expect 30 to 45 frames. Anything more than that is just for very specific areas, and it's for a brief moment. So short conclusion, probably very playable on the ROG Ally, because the Fallout 76 seems to be working fine at 30 frames, but we need an update to fix the performance difference between plugged and unplugged in 15 watts or more, because the difference is pretty significant. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you didn't, comment, maybe subscribe if you like the content. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.